Let me just introduce pretty quickly now the former president of Aki Kinga and legal practitioner, Mr. Godi Uwazirike. Thank you for joining us and being part of this discussion that we're having. I mean, I don't know what bit of the conversation that you were able to pick up. We're talking about the sort of leadership we have, whether we need a change. But specifically, I wanted to ask you, we know that today, one of the biggest national issues that we hear now is restructuring, redefinition, trying to redefine who we are, reconfigure, as Staladi would say, whichever term suits you best. Does it show the level, does it show where we are right now, that everyone right now in some form is asking for a different sort of structure?
Because this is the longest period of continuous rule. This civil rule from 1999 to today is the longest period that is unbroken. If you notice, from independence, 1960 to 1966, it was broken. Then came back 79 to 83, it was broken. And 1990, this is the longest period. If you check, it's 18 years. Now, we are getting used to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to hold views, freedom to disseminate. Actually, that is why you are here. Otherwise, the one man sitting there will point a gun at your head and say what I want you to say. So we are free to talk. And because we have that freedom to think first and talk, we're now doing what God has given us, that freedom to change our views as we move on. If things are not right, we complain. If things are okay, we see whether it will be better. And when government mistakes this, our continuous reaction as sabotage, then something is wrong. The need for a change is what brought President Muhammadu Buhari, and it was APC that championed it. Remember, ACN started it. As soon as Jonathan took over, ACN branded him clueless. And from there, APC took over. So if today we are complaining, it is a continuation of what we were doing 4, 5, 6 years ago. Now, the need for restructuring is a basic nature of man. See, as a baby, when you're born, one of the things you learn is how to move. As soon as you can move, you start running. And when you start running, you want to be treated as a human being, even though you cannot earn anything. So restructuring goes with us until the person dies. Yeah,
listening to the president today, he did say that the calls for restructuring were legitimate. It is how it is going to be and what form that is still the question mark. I
respect Mr. President, so I won't say everything I want to say, but let me say it like this. It is too late in the day for APC government to talk of restructuring. The only item on the table for this government is called primaries and then the main election. So if anybody wants to tell me this government will restructure, I will tell you, just don't deceive yourself. Because if you want to restructure, you hit the ground running. First year, second year, you amend the Constitution. It is that amended Constitution that contains restructuring that will guide their primaries in 2018.
Okay, now talking about guiding how this restructuring should be, we went behind the scenes and we began to look at what different people are saying about it. And so we broke it down into different models. Model 1, meaning maintain the status quo and just maybe reduce the amount of powers that you have at the center. You can see Model 2 there on the screen as well, saying, okay, perhaps we have 109 senatorial districts. Maybe those should now become federating units. And then those who say, forget about it, let's go back to 1963. Which would you choose?
See, if you ask me, I would tell you first and foremost, reduce the size of the National Assembly. That is part of restructuring. Reduce the cost of governance, and that is part of restructuring. Make a level playing ground for everybody, that is part of restructuring. Do not make discrimination an instrument of state policy. So that when young men are out looking for jobs and they go for interviews, they expect to be treated equally. When you have a state that has maybe 50 people, then the whole of South-South, South-East, South-West put together, we have only 35 people employed. That is one of the things we're complaining. So change is the only permanent thing in life, and anybody who denies it is denying himself.
Let me put you on pause, Mr. Uwazirike, and go to Abuja to Galtima Lehman. Mr. Lehman, you were a presidential aspirant. You also happen to be from northern Nigeria. There's been a lot of talk about what the North wants in terms of restructuring and in terms of the values of leadership and all of that. I know that the newspapers and indeed other media have reported some of the reactions of some of your fellow Northerners. But the first question would be, what do you make of our leadership situation where it is today? You wanted to be president of Nigeria. There must have been something you thought you could offer which was not being offered. But on a general note, are we better off now than we were in 1960 and coming down the line? Are we better off?
Well, first of all, let me seize this opportunity to congratulate Nigeria on the Independence Day, and also to congratulate His Excellency for a wonderful speech this morning. I listened to him 7 o'clock. Virtually, it was an executive summary. When you're talking about also the kind of leadership, I think Nigeria, in my own opinion, given the overwhelming support of Buhari, I think it's gotten the best that can be expected given the current challenges, particularly with respect to the serious conundrum that was facing this country, the Boko Haram. He frontally attacked it. It's no longer the case where early in the morning you wake up, unknown gunmen have wiped out a whole village, 300 people dead. These things are now part of history. And I want to also look at Malan Garba and differ from him a little bit, because I was born 2 years before the independence. So,
so you are definitely older.
My birthday likely 18th of October, you know, and so to a greater extent, one was in a position to, have gotten the, you know, the history of the leadership. You know, I could remember just when the civil war was about to start, the late Sheikh of Borno, His Royal Highness Mustafa El-Kanemi, you know, he was sharing the same wall with my dad, and I could remember he came holding a barrel of a gun, this double-barrel gun, and there was a dwarf wall between our own house and his own traditional house. He told my old man that, look, the civil war had started. And so I observed, I saw the pogrom, and I hated it. That time, I think maybe I was around some years where I can understand what was going on. And interestingly, 1972, I told my dad that I was going to go to the East to unite Nigeria because I didn't like the civil war. So basically, when you're talking about what had happened in Nigeria, I think one can say that one lived the history. And the challenges of the contemporary era, I don't think we'll have a better leadership situation than we have in His Excellency Buhari is addressing. I was very, very, very happy when I saw him for the first time today, looking very healthy, very strong. And Nigeria is out of recession. The Boko Haram conundrum is now being subjected to, you know, a little bit of skirmish here and there. I was also happy that he mentioned about having a naval base in the Lake Chad, because it is now very, very clear that the insurgency issue is linked to some kind of interesting geopolitical game, you know, linked to the oil and gas finds in that area. And so having a very strong military position in that place. And of course, he talked about also the Treasury single account, which has frontally also dealt with the corruption issues. The case, I'm not praising him. You also, I'm sure you didn't vote for me because he kept on referring to me as a presidential aspirant. I was a candidate, let's say, aspirant and a candidate. And I'm not looking for anything different from what His Excellency is doing. We're supporting him in whatever aspect that is available so that he can go ahead with this. Back to the question of restructuring. I don't think the major issue is being addressed, whether or not you reduce the size of the federating unit to senatorial unit. That's not the issue. The issue, as I said in the other program that we had, it's addressing key concerns, like my own colleague has said, equity issues, issues about listening to the grievances. And I beg to differ a little bit with His Excellency when you're saying that the youths are hot-headed. Hot-headed, yes, and that some of the leaders in the South are a little bit irresponsible and all that. I think there will be a need for us to have some kind of moderation and begin to think that, yes, they don't talk, the agitated people don't talk just because they feel like talking. I think there might be some genuine reasons, and I would crave the indulgence of His Excellency to really find out what is really going on there that is causing a lot of agitation. I'm talking about the Southeast, for instance, and all that.